Welcome to the Resource Podcast, where we take a slightly sassy, fully feminist approach to creating healthy relationships and a joyful life. I'm your host, Tatiana Thompson, and I'm a licensed professional counselor practicing in both Arizona and Minnesota. I specialize in applying clinically proven techniques like EMDR, parts work, and neural reprogramming to help you see real, lasting change in your everyday life. Just remember, I am a licensed therapist, but I'm not your therapist. This show is for informational purposes only, and it's not a replacement for seeking personal mental health or medical advice. So join me now as we explore simple strategies for breaking toxic relationship patterns and applying simple mental health tools to your daily life. Learn how to take the small steps today that will guide you to your best life tomorrow. Hello and welcome to the Resourced Podcast, the show that invites you to question everything you thought you knew about relationships and mental health so you can finally break through your stuck points and create the life you've always wanted. I'm your host, Tatiana, and I'm on a mission to help 1,000 women become emotionally and financially independent so they can choose a relationship instead of needing one. And I want to give you another heads up as always, I'm still in that construction zone. Don't know when that's going to end. So there might be a lot of noises in the background and I apologize for that. But today I want to talk about this obnoxious pattern that many of us fall into. And it could be sometimes and it could kind of be all the time. And it's this pattern of living in extremes. Have you ever noticed your own pattern like of all or nothing thinking or behavior? Because I think it's really, really common for many of us, especially in today's world. We are supposed to be everything to everybody and be excellent at everything that we do. So we're kind of like either on or off. I think one of the most common ways this shows up for women is we tend to be overly busy and then we crash and have like a revenge bedtime and totally check out with social media or wine or just stay up way too late because we finally get time to ourselves to relax. But it can show up in so many different ways. So I'm going to give a few examples that I'll kind of allude to several times throughout this episode. We could maybe be really strict with our diet and workout routine, or we could go to the other extreme of like eating everything in sight and just being like, I don't care anymore, whatever, I'm just going to eat because I want it. We could also be the type of person who spends most of our time trying to be easygoing and we kind of don't speak up when people upset us, or we go to the other extreme, we hit a breaking point and we yell at someone or we feel intense rage or lash out. Maybe we're someone who tries to keep our house compulsively clean and organized. And maybe sometimes we finally hit a wall, crash out, let it all pile up, and we get really overwhelmed by that. Or maybe we're the type of person who volunteers for everything and then finally get burnt out and you shut down and you can't do anything, or maybe even like you get sick the whole time that you have time off because your body's just like, I can't anymore, like we're done. Now, a couple of things I want you to notice about this is that we only seem to live in the extremes or the opposite ends of these behaviors, like they're different poles of the same behavior, right? On the one pole, there's the socially acceptable option, while on the other end of it is the behavior we've been taught is socially unacceptable. So for example, using those ones that we already talked about, I'll be a super hard worker, or I'll be lazy. I will be super healthy, or I'll be gluttonous. I'll be polite and passive, or I'll be aggressive. I'll be Susie homemaker and perfect at everything, or I'll be a slob. I'll be looking out for others first, always, and above myself, or I'll be selfish. So today I want to talk about why this happens, and then of course, how to break the cycle of all or nothing thinking or behavior. First, we'll start with the why and how this comes to be. If you love what you're hearing and you're ready to take your life to the next level, consider working with me one-on-one. I can see clients located in Arizona, Minnesota, and Ohio. Imagine where you could be 1 year from now if you start your healing journey today. The most obvious answer is kind of what we call shadow. Shadow shows up in our lives as qualities that are natural to a human condition, but that we experience shame or blame around at some point. And we may not have even experienced it firsthand. Maybe we saw, like, for example, our dad commenting on heavier women's bodies in a negative way, or mom putting her own body down. And that right there would be enough to teach us that largeness in a woman is not desirable and to be avoided. So we adopt the strategies that will keep us from being shamed in that way, right? We become very concerned about our appearance and our size and our eating and all of those things. And I really think it's important to stress here just how effective social shaming is at creating imbalances in our systems, because we are social creatures and our literal survival depends on staying in contact with others. It is written into our DNA to do whatever it takes to be accepted by the group, especially our leaders. And in that case, that's mom and dad, or our parents or our caregivers. So we learn to avoid what they dislike and to take on the traits that they praise. Let's think about how that works with these examples that we've already talked about, how we're avoiding becoming something shameful. Let's listen to them again and notice the negative identity on the back end. So I can be a super hard worker or lazy. What a nasty word we've assigned to that. And we've assigned a moral judgment on it. Or I can be super healthy, or I can be gluttonous. I mean, we're getting into the 7 deadly sins, right? I will be polite and passive, or I'll be an aggressive bitch. Ugh, I don't want to be that, right? I'll be Susie Homemaker, or I'll be a slob. Ugh, nobody wants to be around a slob. That's gross, right? And finally, I'll be looking out for others first, or I will be selfish. And we've already done an episode on this. You should check it out if you haven't already heard it. It's good. And it really breaks down that people-pleasing versus selfish component. Now, another reason we adopt these patterns of all or nothing thinking or behavior is because we usually received praise for the behaviors on the other end of the spectrum. Getting good grades, helping our siblings, keeping our rooms clean, being thin and pretty and likable. And while it's natural for our parents to praise us for being positive contributors to the world, yeah, like it's great that we can help our siblings. Some of these behaviors get distorted in their importance or the level that is required from us to be safe. In fact, I think as young children, because we're such black and white thinkers, we start to conflate doing the right thing and like being basically safe within the social structure with being worthy. Yes, getting good grades in school can help you with building a more financially secure and therefore safer life. But when we get out of balance on that, we actually equate getting good grades with being worthy of basic care, love, and safety. We believe that if we don't perform well, we will be discarded and we will be shunned. And a child who thinks they have to perform in this way is actually likely to experience a lot of shame from it. And then, ironically, they're going to hide from their parents because they think it defines their worth. So, like, if I think that I have to get good grades and I'm struggling in class, I'm probably going to like pull away from everybody as I'm trying to sort that out. I'm not going to ask for help. But the child who doesn't connect their grades to their worth is actually likely to ask for that help that they need when they need it because they haven't attached a moral assessment to it. So good for them. They're actually going to get the help that they need. Here's something even crazier. That hiding that the first child does because they feel the shame, it only worsens the cycle because now they've confirmed that they're alone when they don't do well. And they keep making themselves alone when they don't do well. And in some cases, in all cases, I'm not blaming the child, of course. In some cases, they really do get abandoned for not doing well. But in some cases, our child mind just takes this kind of to an extreme. So this child that feels abandoned or frightened for that, they're going to try to fix it alone. They're going to suffer alone. And they'll be more likely to hide again the next time they feel this problem or they run into this issue. And take a moment of softness for yourself because I bet you can relate to this, whether it's about grades or your body or just some other component about not being good enough or not being, generous enough or whatever it is. You've probably felt very alone when you can't meet these goals. And then you pull away and then you punish yourself by being more extreme about, I got to do better. I got to do better. And this is actually reminding me of that connection between shame, isolation, and addiction. Because we know from research that addiction thrives where someone feels shame and disconnection. And that the more shame a person feels, the more they disconnect, and so on and so forth. It is a perfect storm that just feeds on itself. We also know that effective treatment programs address both of those issues of shame and disconnection. Now, getting back to how we develop these all or nothing patterns, which, by the way, addiction is also, I hope we're starting to see that we're simultaneously trying to avoid the socially unacceptable quality while over striving for the socially acceptable one. But why do we have to strive so hard to stay away from the socially unacceptable ones? Now, here's where I would argue it's because the socially unacceptable behaviors are simply extreme forms of qualities that are natural to the human condition. They're things we should be allowed to do. So we've taken perfectly healthy behaviors and we've assigned moral failing to them, which then causes us to repress them, which then causes them to find a way to be expressed no matter what. And now it's going to be in this more extreme, maybe somewhat malignant form. So let's break this down with the list that we have going. I would argue that laziness itself is not natural, but it has to happen when I don't allow myself to meet that normal human need for rest and fun and relaxation. Those are healthy. Those are necessary to be a healthy person. But if I don't let myself do those things because I equate them with laziness, they aren't laziness, but I equate them with that. Again, my child brain took this to the extreme. But when I equate them with that and I don't let myself relax, my body will eventually go, I can't do this extreme overworking anymore. I'm shutting down. And actually, laziness does show up. I shut down completely, maybe for days at a time. And it is true. It is a form of laziness. Now, again, we're giving a moral assessment to it. But what I mean by that is it's out of alignment with your natural flow of things. Your body, if it was given the opportunity to relax naturally, would not need to fall into that pit. Now, let's move to gluttony or addiction. That doesn't exist in a vacuum like we just talked about, but it does happen in response to social isolation and the inability to meet my needs for comfort and pleasure and connection, right? So again, if I could just meet those needs for connection, comfort, and pleasure, I won't need to resort to gluttony. We know this from, what is it called, Rat City. There's a study where if a rat is given no social access to other rats or activity, they will keep hitting the button for the cocaine. They will do it till they die. But they could have that same button for cocaine and the exposure to it and the addiction. If you give them a space filled with very engaging activities and other rats and social activity, they'd stop. They don't worry about the cocaine. They don't need it anymore. They don't indulge in this addiction or gluttony. And we know that with people too, by the way. There are lots of studies to support that. All right, next one, aggressiveness. Same idea. This is an overreaction to not being able to hold healthy boundaries. If I am allowed to, by the way, there are lots of us who grow up in households where we're not allowed to hold healthy boundaries. We get punished for it. So we hold it in, we hold it in, we hold it in until we blow up. And now we've got aggressiveness. This is a reaction to not being able to do the natural thing that all humans and animals should be able to do. Next one, being slovenly or dirty occurs when we're unable to meet our healthy needs for freedom and exploration and just letting go of control all the time. We need to have freedom in our lives. And finally, selfishness happens when I cannot meet my needs for self-interest and self-care, and I'm always having to put others ahead of myself. Of course, at a point, I'm going to get pissed about that and resentful, and I'm going to be like, screw all of you. I'm worrying about me at this point. But that doesn't happen, again, in a vacuum. It happens when we go to the other extreme and we don't let ourselves meet our needs. So as you can see in each of these examples, the socially unacceptable quality only has to come into existence because I'm not being able to meet my healthy needs. And it's a truly vicious cycle because we assign that moral failing to the more extreme responses, thus causing us to lean into the extreme version of these socially acceptable behaviors. So again, I'm so afraid of being lazy that I overwork and I overfunction. which ultimately then causes me to get tired and collapse into the opposite end and extreme, which is now the laziness, the socially unacceptable behavior. Do you see how crazy making that is? It's like, it's insane. And this is Newton's third law of motion in psychological form. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So we have the pendulum effect. When I overfunction for everyone and I don't take any time for my own needs, I will invariably hit a point where I have to completely shut down and collapse. And the worst part is I'll most likely be dissociated or numb for that rest period and not really enjoy it. And then adding some insult to that injury, I'll feel shame about it, which will make me go back to the other extreme of overfunctioning. Oh my God, it's exhausting. And in all of this, we're not even really resting or regrouping. We're just numbing and shutting down. So I want to offer the idea of what if we were to just get off of this pendulum? Let me break down the steps for you. So this is not necessarily a simple thing. Well, all things that we can do are simple. They're not always easy. That's what I mean to say. So first thing you want to do, number one, is I want you to start just reflecting on your life and identify and write down the areas where you tend to operate in these extremes. Okay. You may notice them right now as you're sitting here listening to this. And you may actually need to go through your day for a week, your days through for a week and just go, oh, I am doing this thing. And by the way, I did not list all of the possible ways that this could be showing up. It's any form of extreme. Number two, if you can, I want you to identify the quality you're trying to avoid. Laziness, selfishness, gluttony. It could be all kinds of stuff. Again, not just what I've named here. Now, remember, when we operate in extremes, it means we do end up exhibiting the qualities that we fear in the long run, right? We go to the positive version, what we call socially acceptable, to so long that we end up pendulating back to the extreme that we don't want to be. So we do end up being lazy or gluttonous or selfish or aggressive. So this is a great invitation to do some shadow work with a therapist where you can accept these parts of yourselves. When we say, yes, I'm lazy or I can be lazy, and we own that, it's a great way to learn what the real need is and start thanking the part of you that's forcing you to that extreme because it's trying so hard to get your need met for you. And when you can stop hating it, you can start meeting its needs. And there you are in a balanced way, not on this pendulum of extremes. Okay, so you don't have to do that shadow work to start working on this, but that is a really cool invitation. So even if you don't do that, in this third step, what I want you to do is I want you to look at what the healthy version is of that need, the balanced version. Rest, self-consideration, assertiveness and healthy boundaries, comfort, pleasure, and connection, freedom. Find out what it is that your body and your heart are really needing and write it down. Now I want you to start mapping out ways you can meet this need with balance and intentionality. So let's say you're overfunctioning all the time and then you're collapsing into again, the revenge bedtime stuff. What if you started delegating more work to your coworkers, your children, your partner, or letting things be off of your to-do list, whether you have someone to delegate it to or not? Maybe the dishes don't need to get done 3 times a day, maybe not even once a day because you don't have a lot of people you're cooking for. Cool. Stop doing that so frequently. Give yourself that rest regularly. So take some things off of your plate. Start scheduling rest into your day. And no, I don't mean functional rest where you're doing mental health work or you're doing something that you are fixing in yourself. I mean actual rest that you're enjoying. Start giving yourself the thing that you need so that your body doesn't force you into an extreme version of it. Now, also be mindful of those ways you're overfunctioning again. And like I was saying just now, see how you can meet your needs for safety instead of overdoing to prove your worth. So again, you might be overfunctioning at work because you're really worried about keeping your job and there's a part of you that believes if you don't overfunction, you won't keep your job and you won't be financially safe and stable. Start talking to that part. Is that true? Do I have to overfunction to keep my job? Is that what everybody else is doing at my job? I doubt it. No. So start talking to that part and start looking at reality and start testing. Can I pull back a little bit and I'm still safe? So you're really teaching that other part that you are still safe and you're still loved, even when you don't do that over-functioning thing. So let's use another example. Maybe you're people-pleasing, which is an effort to avoid being seen as selfish. But what you really need is self-interest and care. So how can you move out of people-pleasing into healthy self-interest? Maybe this is an invitation to stop filling in all the gaps for the PTA when all the other parents bail or don't sign up. Just because other people aren't doing it, that doesn't make it your job. Okay? So let me break this down one more time. Here are the steps. Number 1, identify and write down the areas of your life where you're operating in these extremes. Then I want you to identify the quality you're trying to avoid, that socially unacceptable thing, laziness, selfishness, gluttony, whatever it might be. And then I want you to identify what the healthy need is that's trying to get met inside of you. Rest, self-consideration, boundaries, things like that. Start mapping out ways you can meet that need. And now we're looking at the opposite extreme. Look at the ways you're overfunctioning and start exploring ways to pull back a bit from that and not be so extreme, and see how you can still be safe in your world. You can still be accepted and loved and well paid and all of the things that are making you worried. Okay? All right. Another thing I want you to consider is that whenever we're operating at either end of these extremes, we are not in our highest self. That part of us that is true and grounded and loving and all the goodness that we are is not in charge. Highest selves do not operate in extremes. They aren't trying to prove anything or avoid looking at a certain way in front of people. And they aren't trying to compulsively create more safety, because our true highest selves trust that we are worthy and lovable with all of our qualities and needs just as they are, and that we can handle anything that comes our way. I hope that really makes sense to you, that it is worth getting off this pendulum. That is our show for today. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope this helps you find new awareness to be getting off of that pendulum and create more personal freedom and joy in your life. And I want to remind you, you have more power over your life than you even know. So as I always like to say, why don't you stop chasing and start choosing? Thank you so much for joining me today on the Resourced Podcast. My hope is that you learned at least one practical tool you can apply to your life today to move in the direction of your dreams. If you found this content helpful, be sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and consider subscribing to my email list, which is linked in the show notes. And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. What step will you take today?